Welcome back to another episode of For the Record, recorded and produced by the Delaware State Senate Republican Caucus. Our first week back following a 2-week break. Not back from the podcast, but I should say back in the building. Mm-hmm. Session has resumed. It will continue, I guess, 2 more weeks. We just did wrap up the first of a 3-week one. But anyway, before we get started, from left to right, if you're viewing this on YouTube or wherever, on your phones, TVs, whatever, Senator Brian Pettyjohn. On the left to right, Senator Brian Pettyjohn.
Senator Brian Pettyjohn,
Our Chief of Staff, Deanna Killen.
Yep.
And myself, Matt Revel, Communications Director.
Matthew D. Revel.
Matthew David Revel.
I didn't know that was your middle name.
Yeah. So, Deanna, first week back, what we got to talk about?
Yeah, well, we have quite a bit to talk about today. I think we're going to start with some housing bills. We had a housing committee meeting yesterday, and then there was a bill last week we wanted to talk about, but we didn't get to because I got in a coughing fit. But so let's pick up there where we left off.
You need to stop smoking those Marlboros.
I know, I'm trying hard.
Maybe that's why I'm sweating. Maybe I had a fever that broke because of something she had.
Maybe.
Sorry, Matt.
That and the complete zero air circulation in this room.
There really is. It is extra.
But it's
hot
quite. I
here
mean, if
today.
you had air circulation, then we'd hear the. So
that's
we
fair.
can't have that.
I'll make that sacrifice.
True.
Yeah, I'll make that sacrifice. Anyway, let's get going.
All right, SB 116. This is a bill sponsored by Senator Lockman, and it is relating to right to redemption. So basically what the bill does, it allows tenants who are being evicted for failure to pay rent, no matter how far back, paid back rent they are, they can stay in their home as long as they pay everything that is owed. So a landlord can take them to court, sue them for what's owed, even if it's months and months. I'm not sure I'm not really a pro on the landlord tenant code, so I'm not sure how far behind you have to be before you would be eligible for eviction. Mm-hmm. But whatever that is, all of that could be paid at the very last minute, and the landlord would then have to still allow you to stay with no guarantees that you're going to pay on time moving forward.
So let me think through. So all right, you've got your landlord, you've got a house that you're renting to somebody, and you're talking, let's just say November, December, January, February. Of course, it takes a little while to get through the court system too, because now they have a right to representation.
Correct.
That's paid for by the taxpayers. So you've got the tenant that has been paying, they get an attorney for free. Then comes February or so, the judge says, okay, I'm issuing summary possession to the landlord. You have 15 days to get out. So on day 15, they get their tax refund back, and they're able to catch up with their rent. So they are able to stay there, and then they can pay the rent, all the back rent, and then not pay again
and
for
then
another.
The whole cycle starts over again. Right.
Is there any limit to the number of times that cycle can go? 3.
3 evictions.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of people don't understand, especially in the market now, you've got a lot of people that buy houses for rental, and they use that rental income to pay the mortgage that they have on those houses. So during that time that tenant's not paying, the landlord still has to pay taxes, mortgage, insurance, all that stuff without
and
any income.
Repairs. If there's a repair that has to be done, the landlord's responsible for that. And we spoke a couple episodes ago about my parents who are retired individuals who have 2 rentals. They don't have money to front all the repairs. And on top of that, I don't think they have mortgages on the property, but it again, like we talked about, this type of bill pushes affordable housing out of the market. That's all that this does. My parents, if something like this becomes law, what incentive do they have to keep renting? It becomes a burden at that point to them financially.
Well, to that point, that's what I was thinking. So we in the state, many argue, we're facing a housing crisis, especially an affordable housing crisis.
Right.
There have been a number of pieces of legislation over the past number of years that are definitely driving landlords out of this marketplace and stuff. Yeah. So this just doesn't make sense to me. Sure, you want to be sympathetic to those who maybe are falling on hard times, but to your point, there's another side to the story.
Yeah. And it's, the owner of the property.
Right.
They've got to have rights as well. And that's where the courts are involved. That's where that summary possession happens. So if you're I could almost understand it up until the hearing. But once the judge makes the decision on summary possession, that should be it. That should be case closed at that point in time. And the tenant has to be out, even if they do pay the back rent. So I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about it. I agree with you. It's going to make people less apt to make that investment in being a landlord, because that risk is now a whole lot greater.
Right.
Yeah.
Nope, I agree. And I did look up. I was curious where we were ranked nationally as far as affordable housing goes, and I found a U.S. News and World Report that said we are 33rd in affordable housing, and I believe that was last year. So, and we have more housing bills to talk about. So if we continue to pass these types of bills, it's going to continue to. I think they think that this is helping the market, but it's really not. And I also think there's this common misconception on the other side that landlords are just rolling in it. They have money. They can. I'm not sure where that mindset comes from, but when I hear them talk in committees and on the floor, that's the impression I get. Oh, they've got money, they can handle it. Yeah.
No.
I do find it interesting that that's just another stat where we're in the lower half of the 50 states.
Right.
33rd in housing, 46th in business friendly, 45th
Fifth in education outcomes.
in education, and the business friendliness, I would assume, plays into that as well.
It would have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so also SB 34, which was heard in committee this week. I do not think the bill was signed out yet, but Senator Brown is sponsoring this. This is relating to tenants' right to early lease termination. So it allows a tenant, they can basically give 30 days notice to basically break a binding contract that they have.
Under what conditions?
If they have a contract on a home.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is a reason for it. It's not
Okay.
just if they're buying a home, and I guess they have a signed contract and a date to move in, then they can do a 30-day. But one of the someone came in and spoke for public comment, and I thought he said something really, really interesting. He is a landlord. He said the landlord tenant code was created to protect both the landlord and the tenant. He said, but the legislature over time has created 7 exemptions. This one will be 8 for tenants. To get out of a 60-day lease requirement, but 0 for landlords.
Yeah.
So it's really not friendly for landlords at all anymore.
No.
This is becoming basically a tenant code.
Right.
And it's a fairness issue.
No, it is. And you said there was a 60-day requirement before, so they're cutting
Yes.
that to a third. So, I think that's reasonable, especially, honestly, I don't know a whole lot of circumstances
And-
where you can close on a house in 30
Yeah.
days anymore.
Yeah, it's 30 to 45. I think when we bought, granted, this was tail end of 2020, it was 45-day
Yeah.
closing period.
And that's reasonable. That allows for time for the landlord to get it ready for market, to get it out there, to advertise. It's protection. We're not even thinking about the business impact that this type of thing has on the business owner, on the landlord. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
these are just 2 examples of bills that they think is going to help with the affordable housing crisis, but when you think about how this is going to be implemented and the practical reality of it, this is actually going to make it worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, who would want to be a landlord? Just, sell the house outright to somebody that wants to purchase it. And then,
Yep.
yeah.
And I can assure you, things like these 2 particular bills were 100%. And I don't think my parents would care if I were to mention the amount, but my parents rent 2 homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes in Georgetown, good school district, $900 a month. Where else can you go and rent a home for that price?
No.
Because that's what they want. I know Peyton looks at me like, "Where's this?"
I'll rent it.
and she has a great relationship with her tenants, but these are the types of bills where she's going to be like, "I can't afford at $900 a month. How can you afford to float a new roof, a new HVAC if it's
Yeah,
needed?
yeah.
You can't do that. It's unrealistic."
It also makes contracts like null and void. And it just
Exactly.
sets precedent for breaking contracts.
Right.
Yeah.
Where else can you go and just break a contract whenever you want? And like I said, this public commenter said, if this passes, this will be the 8th exemption for tenants.
I think we're going to have a hard time if she's down there because she doesn't have a microphone.
Yeah, I don't know how to pick up.
We just need you on camera next week. She always wants to interject, but she wants to do it from behind the camera.
Well, I did
No.
put the
She
I did
adds
put the
valuable
captions at the
information.
bottom last time on a couple of the things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course, I'm looking back here paranoid that I'm not actually recording the audio.
Are you?
All right, Matt.
Okay.
Okay.
They got it covered. We have Peyton, Blake, and Christy here, and they got it covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hit the buttons. So I'm always afraid I forgot.
So another bill that was heard in committee this week, this one was voted out of committee, was SB 87, which we have talked about before, related to housing, the accessory dwelling units, the
Yeah.
ADUs.
Yeah.
This one, I expect to see this pretty soon. I'm talking a lot, so I'll let the two of you kind of chime in on this one.
So I guess there's questions surrounding who is exempt, who
Correct.
isn't. Do we ever get any clarification on that? I know we've reached out.
Well, we have our interpretation. Our Senate attorney says, and we've also got a couple other legal experts that have emailed us. They're saying that anything that falls under the Unit Property Act is exempt. But when you do a little research into that, it tends to be that like condominiums, townhomes, things like that. So we had several people call in with public comments saying, my housing development doesn't fall under that.
Yeah.
So these are things that we're going to have to get clarification on.
They fall under
On the Senate
DeCoya, Delaware
Right.
Common Interest, something like that.
DeCoya, yes, I believe that's
DeCoya,
what it is.
yeah.
So we have to get the answers to these questions on the floor.
So, all right. And I can understand why a a condo or something like that wouldn't fall under it. So, in Georgetown, so Village of Cinderberry, those are considered condos, even though they are, some of them are duplex, some of them are, standalone, but those are considered.
They're connected.
Yeah, those are considered condos. But, across the pond over there to Cinderberry Estates, those aren't. So,
Correct.
so in other words, if my neighbor wanted to put an accessory dwelling unit in and our deed restrictions prohibit it, this would make those restrictions null and void, and even Georgetown Town Code null and void, and require them to, by right, I think it said in there,
It does say that.
to be able to put an ADU in there.
And another thing that was brought up that I hadn't thought about was stormwater facilities. When I used to work for the conservation district before coming here, so I'm very familiar with the stormwater and the impervious coverage that is considered when you put a development in. That's what they look at. What is the impervious coverage going to be with the homes and garages? So now you've increased it a lot by putting in all these ADUs. So are the stormwater facilities going to be large enough to handle these now?
Yeah.
So that's something that has to be considered.
Something else that I don't know, I don't remember seeing it in there. Would the towns be able to charge a connection fee for the sewer? Because you're talking ADUs, there's EDUs as well, the equivalent dwelling units. You're adding more to the sewer system and water system as well.
Right.
I would
So-
imagine that would be on the homeowner to connect. But yeah, they'd have to charge a fee for that.
Yeah, because normally a single family home is one EDU, equivalent dwelling unit. But you add pretty much a separate residence there.
Right.
Could the town charge them another EDU? Because all those are used to pay for the infrastructure, for the sewer plant, for the water plant, on all those things.
Right.
So, we're really doing a lot of things. And our historic areas.
Yeah, right.
The
The sponsor is from Lewis and Rehoboth area. Lewis is a big historical.
It
area.
is. So this has the ability to really negatively affect a lot of communities in terms of, the original setup, the original design of those communities, our historic areas with historic structures and things like that. So
And think about parking. You have downtown Lewis, downtown Rehoboth,
Yeah.
hardly any parking. You add another. Let's be honest. A lot of this is going to turn into rentals. Sure, you're going to have some people who use it for family members, but the majority of these will be rentals. So you're increasing the traffic,
the resort
parking.
area.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and they're going to be resort rentals.
In Rehoboth and Lewis.
Right,
exactly.
areas that you don't
Bethany.
have enough parking as it is.
Yeah.
Dewey.
Yeah, so this, I imagine we will see this pretty soon on the floor. So, and I imagine there will be a robust debate because I know we have quite a bit of things that we plan on.
Well, and look, our county government, our towns have really got to come out against it, and
Agreed.
people that live in communities and in developments. This is something. It might be a good idea in concept, but forcing that, making this a by right,
Right.
is something that should be handled by the local government, should be handled by the towns, it should be handled by the county, without overriding the deed restrictions on a lot of these communities too, because.
Right, I'm a
yeah.
big supporter of ADUs. I even spoke in support of them, before, and I, advocated to the county to make this happen. But there have to be rules and regulations
It's
around
got to be
it.
reasonable.
Right,
It can't
like-
be a by right.
Exactly.
It can't be. Yeah.
Exactly. But I do think it's a good way to deal with the affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think about how is it going to work.
Right. Right.
Well, I mean, this comes back to local control as well.
It does.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, this is the
just
second
another
bill.
bill, yeah.
This is the second bill of the General Assembly that's going to try to override local control on things, and it's a dangerous precedent. Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right.
So while this isn't necessarily a housing bill, there is a bill, House Bill 135. I think we saw this last year, or last General Assembly, but I don't think it went anywhere. The Homeless Bill of Rights.
We've seen this the last couple of General Assemblies.
Representative Phillips, which I was surprised because I was doing a little research. I'm like, I wonder how closely this emulates California's Homeless Bill of Rights. They don't have one, which I thought was a little shocking.
What?
Yeah. So I'm like, I mean, of course they have a lot of rules that are probably favorable to homeless community, but they don't have a homeless bill of rights, so to speak. So we're even going to beat California on this one. So there are some concerns with this bill. Health and sanitation risks are what we're hearing. The bill allows for sleeping, eating, storing belongings in public places. So that can, of course, there's a lot of public health concerns associated with that. Trash, improper waste disposal.
I mean, public parks. Just
Right.
think of that.
You go to we had issues in Georgetown Little League, where we had some homeless people that were sleeping up there and leaving needles.
Yeah.
So you have to think
sleeping
about
there in the dugouts.
exactly. So it's this we're going to have to watch closely. I don't know how much support there is for this. I haven't really heard that much. Have you?
No, and I haven't read the bill yet. I think it was just released
Yeah, it's
early this
pretty
week.
new. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be following this, and we'll keep everyone informed about the status of it. But that is on our radar.
And it is. I know previous versions of the bill would allow for sleeping on any public street in a
Yes.
vehicle, which I don't know. That's a back road one. I think a lot of that would be dangerous for the individuals that are doing that, sleeping in a vehicle.
Right.
in a deserted road. Somewhere at the end of the road, but. Again, in our neighborhoods, you just have, people, a caravan of vehicles that comes every night and wants to camp out and sleep there. I see what they're trying to do and provide some safety for these individuals, but at the same time, we need to watch out for our communities. I mean, this is pretty unsafe.
How would a public street be defined, actually? I mean, it sounds like common sense, but...
Something that's
like
not a public
side-
street.
Side of a... Okay.
Something that's not a private road.
I imagine
So, like,
private.
side of a highway? They could just park on the shoulder?
Well, it does say that it as long as it doesn't obstruct traffic or create a hazard. So I guess that would
Oh, okay.
be a consideration.
All right.
Yeah.
Go camp out in the Gumbro Swamp. That dirt road is a state road.
It is a state road. Yeah.
I imagine
seen
private
people sleep back
property
there anyway, I don't
would be
know.
covered
Yeah.
under this. Yeah.
No. Again, these types of things generate a lot of legitimate. I mean, we're having, yeah, we're joking about some things, but it does bring up some real legitimate concerns about where these people can end up sleeping
And public safety, right?
public
And
safety.
not just for public safety for people who aren't homeless, but for the homeless themselves as
exactly,
well.
yeah.
Like let's try to focus more on solutions for the the homeless and getting them housed and things like
Right.
that, as opposed to this type of thing.
Like increasing affordable housing.
Exactly.
instead of
It's all
passing bills to
connected.
discourage it.
It's all connected.
Interesting.
Yep. So a couple other things we have going on. One thing we had mentioned briefly, actually we had talked about it, HB 113, which denies retirement and disability benefits to education employees who have been convicted of sexual abuse or solicitation of a child.
Yep.
We are hearing that the bill sponsor has committed votes to get that bill out of committee. I looked today; it's still in committee,
Okay.
but the bill sponsor seems pretty confident he's going to have the votes to move that forward. So we'll be looking at that.
So I
and-
know the House process is a little bit different than the Senate process. The Senate process, all you need to do is walk the bill around and get the signatures on the back. Or I think the House, they actually have to take a vote to release it from committee. So
Right.
I would assume they have to wait until the next committee day and
It would have to be voted on.
Yeah. Was there a House Education Committee meeting today?
Yeah, because I did check it this morning, so something could have come out
Yeah.
since then.
There was House Education Committee meeting yesterday. Yes.
Can someone check
yesterday.
Can
Wow.
someone check HB 113 to see if it's still in committee?
I'm pulling it up
I
right now.
just checked it. It's still just introduced and assigned to Education Committee in the House.
Yeah.
April 10th.
Okay.
But I know there was a house education because Buxton's 69
Right.
was in there.
So maybe we'll see that come up for a vote next week. We'll also be watching that as well. I think that's a good bill, a bill I do support.
Yeah.
And on that theme, we also have 2 bills that went around for co-sponsorship that actually you're sponsoring. Sextortion bills. One is entitled Gavin's Law, and one is entitled Braden's Law.
Yeah.
So I think they're also going to get a lot of support. So far, we have good bipartisan sponsorship on those.
Right.
I don't know if you want to talk about them. I have some of the information in front of me here.
Oh, you've got it there.
Yep. So Gavin's Law requires school districts to educate students and their parents or guardians about the crime of sexual extortion.
Yeah.
It was passed in South Carolina, and it was called Gavin's Law. And I apologize if I've pronounced the last name wrong, but it's in honor of Gavin Guffrey.
Guffrey.
Is
yeah.
that okay? So I guess it was Representative Guffrey's son who was a victim of this, which led to tragically him taking his life.
Yeah. And with, people putting their whole lives out on the internet and, everything digital now.
Yeah.
One, don't put anything on your phone, take any pictures that you wouldn't want on the front
Yes.
page of a newspaper.
Exactly.
But-
Young people, listen to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The phone could be lost, your account could get hacked, especially, a lot of these phones upload, automatically sync up to the Google Cloud or iCloud or whatever. And if those accounts get hacked in there and people are able to access your photos, that's not a good thing. So, but in instances where this happens, you have, individuals that, are trying to extort people,
Right.
whether they're young people, whether they're older people, whether they're elderly people, even if they don't necessarily have those pictures, they try to extort and make it sound like they have, these photos or these images or videos of people. So
Yeah, I know actually a young person that this actually happened to who had received an email saying, I know that you've been visiting this porn site and I have pictures and videos of you. And as a young person, that can be very scary for them. And this next law, Braden's Law, actually same thing, an Ohio high school student who took his life after, again, being threatened that sensitive photos were going to be sent out if he didn't pay money.
Yeah.
So that bill is Braden's Law. These bills do not have numbers yet because they are still out for co-sponsorship.
when are we going to release them?
I believe Tuesday is the deadline.
Tuesday? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have bill numbers for the next one. But that one deals with accessing those digital
Exactly.
assets upon the death of a minor. And, right now, Delaware does have a digital assets law, when you're an adult. The executor of the estate has access, if they need to get into your bank accounts or stuff like that. But not necessarily with minors who usually don't have wills and all that stuff set
Right.
up. So that sets up something. So one of them has to deal with the Department of Justice. The other one has to deal with our Court of Chancery.
which
And we
both-
actually have support from both the
Correct.
Court of
Both-
Chancery and Department of Justice on both of these bills. So, really appreciate, our staff over there that has done a lot of the research, Christy, and getting the feedback from DOJ, from Court of Chancery, and getting this stuff ready so that we can release these really good bills that are, again, have bipartisan support.
Yep. And a couple other things we're going to see coming up that went out for co-sponsorship. We'll just briefly mention it, and we'll have more information as the months go on. But Senator Hawker is sponsoring a DelDOT appeals board. So for a lot of people who have to work with DelDOT and realize what a pain it is to get entrance permits and things like that approved, that we will now have an actual, board, so to speak.
Is that kind of like the equivalent of the DENREC Environmental Appeals
It
Board?
is. It is. It gives them basically a place they can go to that they can, that
Make
can
their
look at
case.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have an entrance exit permit denied, I guess, or permit application
Right.
denied, then you can appeal.
Right. You can
Okay.
appeal that.
That's
Correct.
good. Yeah.
So I think this will be, a lot of your businesses will appreciate this. So
Definitely.
Sure.
Definitely.
I mean, I just think that there was one business owner when I was on the Board of Adjustments in Millsboro many years ago, that this would have actually been very good to have in place.
yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking even homeowners too, because
Oh, yeah.
DelDOT has
Probably
a
even more
tendency
so, yeah.
sometimes to tell homeowners where they can put their driveways.
Right.
And, for a while they were really pushing the shared driveways, which I think is a horrible
Terrible idea. Terrible.
Love my neighbors, but I don't want to share a driveway. with
Right.
yeah.
them. But, being able to say, no, I don't want a shared, driveway. I want to have a driveway on the other side of the house. because of the layout that I want my house to be.
We're getting ready to go through that now with my brother. He wants to have another, like basically like a horseshoe driveway. So I'll keep y'all posted on how that goes.
And
when
I
we
know they
start to
don't
go
like
through that
horseshoe
process.
driveways anymore at all.
Yeah.
So, they'd rather you have one way in and then a turnaround,
Right.
up near the house, which takes a lot of the
And
land
not everybody
away.
has that much. Yeah.
It's a lot more
They do
asphalt.
that. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. That has not even been out for co-sponsorship yet. So that bill will be ready to probably send out maybe next week.
That's a little sneak peek you gave.
Yeah.
Look at that. Breaking news.
Another bill we have that is still out for co-sponsorship, Senator Buxton, is called a voting centers bill.
It's a good bill.
It is.
Yeah.
Basically, it will allow you, if you've ever taken advantage of the early voting, you can go to any location to vote. You don't have to go to your assigned voting
within
center.
your
Any of the early
Any
voting
of the early
locations.
voting locations,
Yeah.
right?
Within
So-
your county.
Correct, within your
Right.
county. That is very important. So thank you for saying that, Matt. You have to vote within the county. So basically, this will make it on actual election day where you can go and vote at any polling place in your county.
Okay.
That is open,
And look, that's
as
a
opposed to
great
your
idea.
assigned one.
Right now, and with the old system that we had with the printed books and all that stuff, it would be tough to have a whole county-wide list at every polling place.
Right.
Now that we've got the electronic polling books, they can pretty much preload any ballot for the entire county on every machine. And so when you go check in and they give you that blank card with that barcode,
Yeah.
that's what it is. It is it's your ballot. So you put it in there, it reads it, it presents your ballot with, your local county council, your rep, your senators, all those, of course it has all the statewide ones, but it also has all those local candidates there as well.
Yeah, and that was one of the selling points to
Yeah.
us when
It was.
I was
they
about
had
to
us
say
go
that.
down and do the testing back when they were
Yep.
considering this.
Mhm.
Yeah, they said you could, in theory, be in Wilmington. You just put in the address,
Yeah.
everything comes up for Sussex.
But
But
they're,
of
where they're at
course-
least keeping it by county
Right,
now.
we're just
And-
doing it by county. Yeah,
and-
so I could be in Laurel, but even though I live in Dagsboro, I could vote.
And
in
for
Laurel,
those of us
in
who
theory.
work
Yep.
polling places on election day, it's very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
I guess you've experienced this too, Blake.
I worked in the 2020 election, so that was an eventful one already.
Right.
There was a lot of times you get people that like their polling place had changed,
Mhm.
and I guess that was around the time you redistricted.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
They weren't really quite aware of that, and some of them were like, "Why am I going to go over here to vote? It's
Right.
So far away from my house. This is a lot closer, So
And it
this
would
will help a lot with people just being able to vote and more, I guess, effectively for their own daily schedules. that
Right.
they-
And it would allow you to vote right at the polling place you're working at, as opposed to having to leave and go to your assigned polling place. So it is a good bill. Hopefully, we'll see that move along.
Yeah, has Department of Elections weighed in on that one?
Yes, the Commissioner Albin supports the bill.
He does.
He does.
Okay, well, it sounds like, and my concern was, do they have like the back end technology to do it now? So it sounds
He
like
believes so,
they do.
yes. And I do want to give a shout out to Commissioner Albans. I think he's great.
He is.
He is such a good person to work with. He's very responsive, and I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah. Nope.
Former guest on the podcast. Well, the
Oh,
second
that's right,
floor
yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but he's great to work with. Always very helpful.
And also just think, I mean, again, those, like you said, those of us who have worked at the polls, I'm sure we've all have experience where an individual comes and then they
Yeah.
find out that they're at the wrong location or they are upset about that.
Right.
Who knows if they even came back and vote? I mean, so
Yeah.
in theory, this would possibly increase voter turnout. too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And, and I see the reason for keeping it within the county too,
Yeah.
because the ballots, if I'm remembering right, the ballots have to be taken to the courthouse.
Correct.
For the Board of Canvass that meets, on the Thursday after
Right.
Election Day, Return Day, to certify the results. So it would be a nightmare to be able
Yeah.
to sort all those through. So I get the understanding with that, but I think that'll be a really good for that for getting people out there to vote and make it more convenient for them.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And also just think back, I think it was 2022 election where a couple of the polling locations, I forget what district it was in, I think it was around the Smyrna area,
Ran out of ballots.
had run out of ballots.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
you would be
That's
able to
right.
go to another polling location.
Well, and I
right?
think they fixed that too. That
Oh, I'm
there,
sure they
there
have,
was,
but I'm
there
just
was a big
saying,
thing
yeah.
about that, and I think that's one of the audit reports now as to how many ballots are being sent out after the election, how many ballots they had left over. So just make sure they had enough. So, yeah.
Yep, we had that confirmed by Anthony on that podcast
There you
episode.
go.
That was one of
Good.
the questions. But yeah, that's what I'm just thinking. In worst case, let's say something does happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can go and vote at a different location.
Right.
Good. Yep, good bill.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is something you actually just sent us this afternoon, so we haven't had time to dive in as deeply as I would like.
I haven't even looked at
Yes.
it yet.
So
Yeah.
it's the felony weapon charge and disposition statistics.
Yeah,
for
so-
2022, which actually you had requested this for several years back.
Yeah, I've requested I didn't request it last year, but I've been requesting this just to report on weapons charges in Delaware and what the disposition of those charges are. So,
Right, and this comes from the Criminal Justice Council.
it comes from
That's what the-
Statistical Analysis Center.
Correct.
Yes.
It's, right.
Yeah.
But it's under them because
Yep.
that's what the letterhead said.
Yep. So, the director of the Statistical Analysis Center, Felisa, she's great. It used to be, I think, usually it was over a month that it took to get the information before. I think she got this to me in like a week and a half.
Okay.
So I guess they probably kind of have some things built in now. It makes data retrieval a little bit
I was
easier.
going to say, yeah, they probably just had it on standby.
They're like, all right, it's about that time of year. Let's get it ready for Pettyjohn.
that's right.
So were all of these firearm, or some of them, or is it just
But these are all firearms.
these are all
These
firearm?
are all firearms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so for 2022, a total of 4,595,
Yep. Charges.
Charges.
Yeah. Were placed.
and that's a number of different types of charges.
Yeah. So you've got, carrying a concealed deadly weapon as a firearm, carrying a concealed deadly weapon, other types of things, so like a knife, type thing. What's that? Oh, destructive weapon, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony,
Semi-automatic.
possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, person prohibited firearm ammunition. What is that? I can't. My eyes are getting old here.
Oh, man.
Yeah, person prohibited firearms, automatic, semi-automatic handgun and drugs, person prohibited deadly weapon, and then people that violated the background transfer, or the background check with a transfer of a firearm.
Yeah. So
as
for
well, so.
2022, they had a total of 4,595 of those charges. Of course, we have the ones that were dismissed. And when I say dismissed, these are not ones that were dismissed by the court. These are ones that were dismissed prior to going to court. Total of 3,612.
Oh.
And of course, it could be for a variety of reasons: lack of evidence, witness unavailability, plea deals.
And some of that is in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did have that.
Yeah.
Because the first few years I didn't do that, but when I found out that when there's a nollie pros or dismissed, that there's a disposition code that goes along with that too.
Okay.
That allowed us to get that more granular data.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And for 2023, 3,845 total charges. 2,975 were dismissed. And for 2024, most recent data, 4,070 total. 2,409 were dismissed. This one here, there's still a lot pending. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's because it's still so close. It's 2024,
Right.
but there's
still
quite a
got
few
lot of-
pending,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
Still
1,100
working their way through
pending.
the court
Yeah,
system.
1100
Yeah.
still that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can, dive a little deeper into that data to find out exactly why they were dismissed. But this could be a little bit of the issue. I think some people could look at this and argue, are we kind of being soft on crime? Why aren't we, enforcing more of these, gun laws that are on the books? Because we always see bills for additional gun charges, but then you see that, a lot of these are being dismissed. And granted, there are reasons why they could be dismissed. I will acknowledge that. But
Yep. And just a quick look at, some of the 2022, out of the however many, 3,612.
Yeah.
for 2022,
Yeah,
3,612 were dismissed.
So the biggest one was pled to other charges in the same indictment. 1,702.
Does that mean they can plea down, basically?
Well, they pled guilty to other charges. So it could have been.
But a lot of times when you plead to other charges, it's
You could
because
plead-
those you're pleading to a lesser charge.
You could, or let's say they charge you with 10 counts of something. You plead guilty to one count.
Right.
So you're not pleading guilty to all 10. You're pleading guilty to one count
Right.
of, whatever that is. Looks like there were pled to other charges by something. It's not the complete form. Nollie pros Attorney General. So
Dismissed.
that's the Attorney General deciding not to do prosecution.
What's
That's
that?
253
Okay.
out of them. I'm just
And
trying
there's
to do
no
this.
reason given for that?
No,
That's
not
interesting.
here. Charges reduced to lesser, 132. Disposition in other court, 114.
Yeah. And see,
So-
to me, I still feel like there's an argument for assault on crime here.
There could be, but it's interesting to kind of look at some of those codes. Now, 384 of those, no code entered.
Yeah.
So they were dismissed with no explanation as to
Right.
what category under there.
So if we
default
want to
fall.
address some of these gun issues that we're having in Delaware, rather than creating new laws, let's enforce the ones we have on the books.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good start.
Yeah. So we'll go through this data a little bit more this week. And again, like you said, I just sent it to you today.
Right.
I got it today. I wanted to turn around to you.
I know people are always interested in this, so I wanted to bring it up.
But we'll put this information out for people so that they can see these numbers. But but again, as we're looking at what is happening in the criminal justice system, and look, if we brought every case to trial, we would slow the court system down to a crawl. I was just talking to one of the deputy attorney generals from Sussex County today, and things are slow as it is, and it's intended to be slow. We do have speedy trial positions. That's a constitutional right to a speedy trial. But if we started throwing all of these and say we're going to take every one of these to trial, it would slow things down tremendously. We'd have to build new courthouses and hire judges and all that stuff everywhere. So, the system's built for some of these things, but where do we draw the line if it's happening too much?
Yep.
I guess.
So more to come on that.
Yeah.
So another one I'm going to keep plugging away. I think I've probably mentioned this bill on every podcast, but it's because I'm very passionate about it. SB 78, that's being sponsored by Senator Sturgeon. It's waiting. It's on the ready list, so we could see this at any time. Don't know what the agenda for Tuesday looks like, but this is the one that prohibits discrimination in Delaware public schools based on various characteristics. And of course, the one I'm concerned about is gender identity. And I think that people really need to be paying attention to this bill, because this bill will 100% make it so biological boys who identify as girls will be able to play in girls' sports and will be able to access a locker room. And before anybody says anything, not you two, but the comments that we usually get when it comes to this is, this is such a small percentage of the people. It's like, well, okay, so how many is it okay? How many men, are okay to come into a locker room? 2? It's a small percentage. I'm just getting tired of the argument, and a lot of the argument I find is coming from men, which I find hilarious, because that's all we hear is, you're not allowed to talk about reproductive rights because you're men. But yet, when it comes to this issue, that's the argument. They don't use that argument.
Come on, it's all about the scenario. You know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have yet to. So, oldest daughter's a junior in high school. I've yet to find her or anyone in her friends orbit who are all athletes who are okay with those.
Yes. Agreed.
Particularly about the locker rooms.
Right.
I mean, their sense of privacy would surely be violated.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that's not even mentioning the competition aspect of it.
No.
Right, exactly. And so it's really more than twofold, but you have two issues here, and I get tired of hearing it's such a small percentage. It's like, okay, so if you have one person coming into a girl's locker room making 20 girls uncomfortable, that's an issue. And if it only happens once, that's an issue. And if you look at the statistics of how much this particular thing is happening, or this community is growing every year, you continue to let this go and you continue to make these exceptions, it is going to be a very, very big deal in years to come.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
these types of issues, again, this is nothing to do with the transgender community at all. That's not what I'm saying. I am specifically referring to biological boys trying to come into girl spaces and play in our sports. It's a fairness issue, and it's an issue where this makes women uncomfortable.
Yep.
So keep an eye on that. I will definitely let you know. I fully think this bill will pass. I have no doubt they have the votes. So we'll keep everyone updated on that.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the Kissing Cousins bill?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a joke. That's not what it's really called.
Yeah, colloquially. So House Bill 8 was a piece of legislation that was introduced by, who was it? Representative Medina Anton
yes.
Wilson
right?
Anton,
Wilson
yep.
Anton.
Yep.
Anyway, so it would have recognized marriages between first cousins, I assume who maybe moved from a state where this was already
Yes.
legal. Or
She
maybe-
actually
Or country.
Yeah,
right.
country.
She actually gave that example on the floor. She had some constituents that were from another country that moved to Delaware. They were their first cousins. They're married. Their marriage was not recognized when they moved here.
Right. So it had cleared whatever the House committee was, the House Health Committee. That's ironic.
It's a weird health committee
Yeah.
for it to be in, isn't it? Yeah.
Health and human development.
Yeah, I guess it, still kind of deals with it. Well,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, it only received 10 votes out of 16, but I'm surprised. it did
there's
that many.
16 people on a committee.
16 people, Health and Human Development, 16 members.
That seems efficient.
That's
That's
insane.
government for
Yeah.
you right there.
That's another conversation altogether. Well, anyway, but yeah, cleared the committee. But on Tuesday, it was brought to the floor for a vote, and it failed. I believe the vote was 23 no, 12 yes.
I can't remember the exact
and then
number.
I think I believe there was 5 absent and then not voting. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever that breakdown was.
Yeah, 12 yes, 23 no, 1 not voting, 5 absent.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Right off the top of my
Look
head.
at
I had it
you.
right. Look at that.
Somebody did their homework.
That's, Yes, I knew the one thing I was going to
Yeah.
talk about this. No, so we, yeah, so it had obviously drawn a ton of attention online.
Mm-hmm.
We'd posted about it on our TikTok account.
I did.
That's right. Actually got some bipartisan
That was
likes
funny,
on it.
yeah.
We won't say who,
Yeah, it
but-
got a lot of play on social media, and at first it was being represented falsely. They
Yeah, I
were saying it
think our
was
first reading
legalizing
was-
first
yeah,
marriage
yeah,
or
but-
first cousin marriage, and that wasn't what it was doing.
But-
Not that I support it, but I just want to be clear about what the bill actually does.
But how much would you want to bet that
One-
had it had passed?
Yes.
Next
in
step would have
another
been-
year or
Agree.
two.
Yeah.
Agree.
I guarantee, because this body, well, I say this building here is
Yes.
very.
Everything
they're known
is done
for
incrementally.
Slippery slopes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this would have been the first step to it. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Especially since one of the states that allows it's neighboring state of Maryland.
Yeah, that was
There you
surprising.
go.
Yeah.
I wonder when they passed that. Is
I don't
that
know.
recent or is that always
Probably
been?
not, because remember, I mean, it used to be
That would have been a.
they had very lax marriage laws over in Maryland. There were a lot of people that would go like up to Elkton and get a marriage license and be able to get married the same day.
Interesting,
way back
okay.
in the day. So yeah, no, it's I don't know.
How do you know this, Brian?
Not
You wanna
from
tell us the
personal.
story?
No, not from
Oh,
personal
okay.
experience.
Thought we were having a juicy
It was-
story.
No.
Blake has a story.
I do know. It just clicked in my brain because I have a bag at home that I was gifted from a uncle of my great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, but it's from the 1950s. But he went to Elkton, Maryland, to get married. And
Okay.
He lives in Laurel.
Okay, interesting.
So it just kind of clicked in my head. But
Yeah.
based on what I've gathered from him, he was a very risky
I
person.
don't.
So that
maybe
makes a lot of sense.
maybe somebody who knows some more of the background. I think now what we're talking about. I think there was something about you used to have a blood test that you had to have to get
Yeah,
married, and they didn't
you did.
require it there too, or something.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a lot of things about that, but yeah, I remember like same thing like my uncle or somebody saying something about, oh, you're gonna get hitched, go up to Elkton to do it or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
Just one of those things that you remember from 45 years ago.
That's a long time, man.
Yeah, I know we're getting old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not we.
But you weren't
we Deanna and I are the same age.
so you weren't considering a cousin or anything 45 years
No,
ago.
I was
Okay,
not.
All right, just
no,
making sure.
absolutely not.
All right. So let's go ahead and end with, and I'm going to mention this just because it's got so much press. Senator Buxton's Caesar Rodney resolution.
Yeah.
Yes, it's gotten a lot of press. And just a little background on this. The Caesar Rodney statue has always been, for
In
a long
Rodney
time,
Square.
in Rodney Square. It was taken down during the whole George Floyd protests and all that due to, some of the racial tensions. It's been in storage. Senator Buxton wants to bring that. I think he knows it's not going to go back up in Rodney Square, so he would like to see that statue brought to Dover and placed somewhere in Dover. So that's basically all the resolution says, is just instructing the city of Wilmington to work with the state and Dover to find a suitable place for it in Dover. But it's got a lot of press, which it kind of surprised me.
Yeah, it seems pretty innocent too, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But
We had WBOC covered it. The NAACP representative, I can't recall the name, so I apologize, but they had said that basically they didn't necessarily have a huge issue as long as the full history is told, and Senator Buxton is 100%, same, thinking the same thing, that we should tell the whole story.
yeah, I mean, every interview that he's done that I'm aware of
Yeah.
anyway, and have been listening in on. I mean, he has mentioned that.
Right. So,
He's very open about it.
yep.
Yeah.
So right now that, resolution has been released. It's just laying on the table. I'm not sure if that will progress or not, but that's the status of that for now.
Okay. Yeah, more to come on that then.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a fun fact with that too is it's costing $100 a month to be stored where it
Is it? Okay, I'm glad you said that, 'cause
it's
someone-
costing all of us money to keep it stored because of.
Okay. Interesting. I was wondering what the cost was on that. We talked about that today.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
Separate meeting that we had. Okay, well, good. Well, anything else today?
That's all I have.
Yeah, we had a lot to cover. So we'll be back in next week and then the week following. And then, a 2-week break for markup.
JFC, yep.
Yep. And then after
But that's
that.
budget, and that's budget hearings for those
Yeah.
people that don't know what that means.
Now, one key thing is on the 19th, so we can talk about it next week and then really follow up the week after. The 19th is when DFAC meets.
Yes. And what is DFAC?
Delaware Economic Financial Advisory Council.
Yes.
That is the council that kind of goes and talks about what we're expecting in terms of revenue.
Correct.
That's what we base our budget numbers, our
Yes.
revenue numbers off of. Constitutionally in Delaware, we can only spend 98% of, or we can only budget 98% of what we expect our revenues to be. So once we get that DFAC in May, actually there's another one that's in June as well. That's what we base our final budget numbers on. So, a lot of times, coming up to DFAC in June, we'll get, an extra couple million here, a few million there or something like that.
Don't expect that to happen this year.
We don't think it's going to happen this year. No. But we'll have a better idea come the May DFAC, where kind of those numbers are trending.
Yeah, and we can discuss that. We'll bring everybody up to date after
Yeah.
what that's about.
Yeah,
And if there's anything that you guys want to hear from us or you want us to talk about that we're not talking about, let us know. Drop it in the comments.
Yeah.
Give us some ideas of what you'd like to hear. And
one thing we decided this week, we are going to continue the podcast through the
Yes.
off season as well.
Correct.
So instead
off
of
season would be after June 30th.
Yep.
After
So
we
instead
break.
of talking about legislation that's happening here in the building, we're going to try to come up with, guests to talk about different things that are happening within the state of Delaware. So, business owners, educators, some of the goings on in Delaware. So, we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep new content coming in, even though we don't have bills to discuss.
Right.
State fair time, maybe we'll do something, at
that'd
the
be
fair.
cool.
Yeah.
There
do
you go.
some- And we're going to do a lot of these on site. And,
Yeah.
and some of the theme that we want to, focus on is, how are some of the policies that we passed this year, last several years? How is it affecting your business?
Mm-hmm.
How is it affecting the classroom? So that's, we're going to do other fun stuff too, but that's kind of one of the themes that we're going to go after.
And then just, having everyday Delawareans, stop in and be part of this as well, whether they're business owners or parents or whoever,
Yep.
talk about some of these issues.
Yeah.
Maybe get our policy director on, talk about some
That
of
would
this
be
Sounds
new
like a
legislation
great
that we'll be
idea.
introducing
Yes.
next year.
That would be great.
State,
I have 2 in the queue.
There we go.
there you go.
Sounds
And
awesome.
if nothing else, state fair, you're definitely on.
You are going to be on the
You'll
state
bring
fair
your
one.
you'll
Yeah,
bring
you're
your
like the
goat.
queen of the
You'll
Delaware
hold your
State
goat
Fair.
and your pig
Yeah.
and have it.
sheep.
Sheep. Okay.
We're gonna be showing.
And we'll have Senator
Bethel there.
Pettyjohn kissing a pig.
I'll be drinking raw milk.
That would draw an audience. Senator Pettyjohn will kiss a pig at the state fair. And
I
we're
will.
gonna have
I
it
will
on
kiss a pig
podcast.
for the podcast.
Okay.
Yes.
Senator Lawson actually did. A couple
He
years
did.
did.
ago,
He
right?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what that was, but he won.
Blake is
some
just over there just laughing. He's like, glad I'm not an intern. I won't be here.
He's like, oh, I might come back for that one.
No, you're in Georgetown. We'll get you.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Well-
all for this week.
Appreciate it, everybody. And we'll see what happens next week.
All right. Yep. All right.